I've witnessed many tense moments in Washington, but what happened in that Homeland Security Committee room on December 3rd, 2025, that changed everything I thought I knew about institutional accountability. Ranking Member Bennie Thompson stood up, his voice cut through 3 hours of evasion. Secretary Noem, you took an oath to tell the truth. Then you sat down and dodged it for over 3 hours. The room fell silent. Every camera focused on one woman. Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, had just been formally accused of lying to Congress, under oath. Let me take you inside that moment. Because what Thompson revealed wasn't just about immigration policy. It was about whether sworn testimony means anything anymore in America. At exactly 2:47 p.m., Thompson began dismantling Noem's testimony piece by piece. His approach was surgical, no emotion, just facts. You repeatedly testified that you follow the Constitution, he said, but a federal court found that DHS believes it has the right to stash residents in foreign prisons without due process. Noem's face tightened. Her hands gripped the witness table. Thompson wasn't finished. The Fifth Amendment says no person shall be deprived of liberty without due process. No person, Secretary Noem, but your department, different rules. The constitutional violation was stark. Federal courts had already ruled. DHS was detaining people without meaningful legal access. Not policy disagreement, constitutional defiance. But Thompson's next accusation hit harder. The Supreme Court unanimously directed the government to facilitate Kilmar Garcia's return to the United States. His voice sharpened. Unanimously, Secretary, but you just testified that Garcia will never return. So which is it? Do you follow court orders or don't you? The contradiction was devastating. Supreme Court orders aren't suggestions, they're mandates. Noem had just told Congress she would ignore a unanimous directive from the nation's highest court. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Republican members shifted uncomfortably. Thompson pressed forward. You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children, claimed their parents consented, but you've produced no evidence. None. His voice carried controlled anger now. Your agency lured families to ICE appointments under false pretenses, lied to them, refused to let them speak with attorneys, deported them before courts could intervene. The allegations were staggering. American children with cancer deported, families deceived, due process obliterated. Noem attempted to respond. Congressman, the department follows nothing, Thompson interrupted. You've given yourself the unilateral right to deport anyone you deem a threat. You refuse court orders. That puts all of us at risk. Silence gripped the room for 4 seconds. The weight of his words settled over everyone present. As Fed chair, I've dealt with institutional crises. But this was different. This was a cabinet secretary being accused of systematic constitutional violations in real time, on camera. Thompson shifted to national security. Your budget cuts, cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, aviation security, you've gutted FEMA and CISA workforces. We don't even know how many people are left to defend against Chinese cyber attacks. The scope became clear. While political theater focused on immigration, core national security functions were being hollowed out. FEMA couldn't respond to disasters. CISA couldn't defend against cyber threats. You have no written plans for FEMA, Thompson continued. No plans for CISA. You've bought into conspiracy theories calling CISA a censorship agency. CISA never censored anyone. Noem's legal advisors whispered frantically in her ear. The cameras caught every nervous gesture. Thompson's conclusion was devastating. I'm disappointed that you took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so. But his final words carried a warning that chilled the room. If you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. The hearing ended. No applause. Just the sound of chairs scraping and reporters rushing to file stories. What made Thompson's statement extraordinary wasn't the accusations. It was the methodology. He didn't speculate. He didn't question motives. He relied on court rulings, sworn testimony, documented gaps between what Noem said and what the law requires. When he said, "You did not tell the truth," he wasn't expressing opinion. He was drawing conclusions based on legal contradictions. This is why oversight matters. Not for political theater, but because unchecked executive power erodes constitutional guardrails quietly, case by case, until damage becomes normalized. From my perspective at the Fed, institutional credibility is everything. Markets trust us because we follow rules, respect courts, tell the truth. When cabinet secretaries ignore Supreme Court orders and make false statements to Congress, it undermines the entire system. The implications extend beyond immigration. If DHS can detain people without due process, defy court orders, and mislead Congress, what stops other agencies from similar behavior? What happens when the Treasury, the Fed, or Justice Department decides constitutional constraints are optional? Thompson's courage in that moment can't be understated. He formally accused a sitting cabinet secretary of lying under oath. That's not hyperbole. That's a potential criminal referral waiting to happen. But here's what should terrify every American. Noem walked out of that hearing still in charge of national security, still ignoring court orders, still separating American families. The guardrails held for 3 hours. They exposed the truth. But whether they'll enforce accountability, that remains an open question. As someone who's spent decades in public service, I've learned that institutions only survive when people respect their constraints, when oaths mean something, when truth matters more than political expedience. December 3rd, 2025. The day a congressman formally accused a cabinet secretary of lying to Congress. The cameras captured everything. The transcript is public. Now we find out whether that matters anymore in America. But let me tell you what happened in the moments leading up to Thompson's devastating takedown, because the signs were there from the very beginning. When Noem entered that committee room at 11:30 a.m., she carried herself like someone who expected deference. Navy blue suit, American flag pin, legal advisors flanking her like bodyguards. She'd testified before Congress dozens of times. This was supposed to be routine. Republican Chairman Mark Green opened with softball questions. Secretary Noem, how is DHS protecting our borders? Standard talking points followed. Border security, national sovereignty, protecting American families. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. Noem deflected tough questions with practiced ease. Congressman, I appreciate your concern, but I need to refer you to ongoing litigation, or that matter is under departmental review. But I watched Thompson during those exchanges. He wasn't grandstanding like some ranking members do. He was taking notes, checking documents, cross-referencing testimonies with court filings. At 12:45 p.m., something shifted. Democrat Jasmine Crockett asked about the Kilmar-Garcia case. Noem's response was telling, and that individual will never set foot on American soil again. I can guarantee that. Thompson's head snapped up. His staff immediately began pulling Supreme Court documents. The court's order was crystal clear. The government shall facilitate Mr. Garcia's return to the United States within 30 days, dated November 15, 2025. 18 days had passed. Zero compliance. During the lunch recess, I watched Thompson huddle with constitutional lawyers. They weren't preparing political attacks. They were building a legal case, document by document, precedent by precedent. When proceedings resumed at 1:30 p.m., Thompson's questioning took a different tone, precise, clinical, each question built on the previous one. Secretary Noem, are you familiar with Zadvydas versus Davis? Congressman, I'm familiar with many cases. That's not what I asked. Are you familiar with Zadvydas versus Davis? The 2001 Supreme Court case established that indefinite detention violates due process, even for non-citizens facing deportation. Noem's legal advisor whispered urgently in her ear, I'm generally familiar with the case, yes. Good, because that ruling specifically prohibits what your department is doing in detention centers across 3 states. The room temperature seemed to drop. Republican members started checking their phones. Democratic members leaned forward. Thompson continued methodically, Yolanda Martinez, age 34, held without hearing for 127 days. Roberto Sanchez, age 41, 89 days. Maria Elena Rodriguez, age 28, detained with her American-born daughter for 156 days. Each name hit like a hammer blow. These weren't statistics. These were real people, with faces, with families, with constitutional rights being violated in real time. Do you know what those 3 people have in common, Secretary Noem? I don't have those specific cases in front of me. They're all legal permanent residents. They all requested hearings. They were all denied for months. The constitutional violation wasn't theoretical anymore. It was documented, systematic, ongoing. But Thompson saved his most damning evidence for last. Let's talk about the children. He opened a manila folder. Sofia Martinez, age 8, American citizen, born in San Antonio, brain cancer patient, deported with her mother on October 23rd. Currently in a Guatemala City hospital with no access to her oncologist. Noem's face went pale. Congressman, I can't discuss individual cases due to privacy. Privacy? Thompson's voice carried controlled fury. A dying American child's privacy or your department's liability? The mother made the choice to take her daughter. Show me the consent form. Silence. 5 seconds of dead air. Secretary Noem, where is the documented consent from Sofia Martinez's mother agreeing to remove her daughter from cancer treatment? No response. Where is the court order authorizing removal of an American citizen child from medical care? Still nothing. Where is any legal justification for what you did to an 8-year-old girl with brain cancer? The question hung in the air like smoke. Cameras captured every moment of Noem's silence. That's when I realized what I was witnessing. This wasn't political theater. This was a constitutional crisis playing out in real time. A cabinet secretary had potentially committed crimes against American citizens, under oath, on national television. From my position at the Federal Reserve, I've seen financial crises destroy institutions overnight. But constitutional crises, they destroy democracies. They erode the fundamental trust that holds societies together. When Thompson delivered his closing statement, calling Noem a liar, it wasn't hyperbole. It was a formal accusation backed by legal evidence, the kind that should trigger immediate congressional investigation, the kind that should end careers. But here's what chilled me to the bone. As Noem walked out of that hearing, she was still in charge of national security, still separating families, still ignoring court orders. The next morning, December 4th, I received calls from central bank governors worldwide. They weren't asking about interest rates or monetary policy. They were asking whether American institutions still function. Jerome, the European Central Bank president, said, "If your cabinet secretaries ignore Supreme Court orders, how do we know your government will honor treaty obligations? How do we trust dollar-denominated contracts?" That's when the scope hit me. Constitutional breakdown doesn't just hurt democracy. It destroys economic credibility. It undermines the dollar's reserve currency status. It threatens the entire global financial system that depends on American institutional reliability. December 3rd, 2025 wasn't just about immigration policy. It was about whether America is still a nation of laws. The answer? We're about to find out.